Hi everyone and welcome on Storie Straordinarie. This channel is owned by Filippo Peschiere. I'm Iris Perrone and today we have the amazing opportunity to host Dan Baumann. So thank you for being here. And Dan is a writer and speaker and known for his extraordinary journey through adversity and personal transformation. In 1997, while visiting Iran, he was falsely accused of espionage and held in a high security prison. And through this experience, he discovered a powerful inner strength. Today, Dan is traveling all over the world, inspiring people to find hope and growth even in the darkest situation. So his message is about resilience and compassion and seeing hardship as an opportunity for transformation, personal transformation. And as I said, today we have this amazing opportunity to know more about Dan's story. So thank you for being here and welcome on Storie Straordinarie. So we would like to ask you a bit about your life. If you want to share, what do you do? Where are you right now? And what do you do in life? And your journey through life.
Thank you so much. Such an honor to be with you. Such an honor to connect with Italy. I love Italy. The funny thing is I've never been there. My father's from Switzerland, my mother's from Sweden, so I have a lot of connection in Europe. I've been everywhere in Europe, but not Italy.
Not yet.
But I have many Italian friends around the world, and of course I love your food. But yeah, such an honor to be with you. I'm living in Hawaii at a Christian training center called Youth with a Mission. And I travel the world and talk to people all over the world about who God is and about what He's done in my life, especially in the midst of facing many trials and many hard times.
Thank you so much. So, do you want to tell us why you were in Iran, what happened, and what were you doing before Iran? Before your imprisonment and what happened?
I lived in Afghanistan for 10 years and became fluent in the language, which is the same language of Iran. I worked in a hospital. I took care of all the finances for a hospital. It was there in Afghanistan that I became very aware of and in love with neighboring nations. And then Iran came into my scope of maybe I could go visit there and tell people about Jesus, just like I had done in Afghanistan. Long story short, me and my friend got 2-week visas. I was as a Swiss, my friend was a South African. We got 2-week visas to Iran. I love Iran. And I had the privilege to go and be there for 2 weeks, enjoying the people, their culture. And with that, I was so amazed at people's hunger for more, hunger for knowledge of something maybe different than they knew from their government challenges. And many, many were hungry to find out about my journey and my journey with Jesus. And then that's when everything changed when I left the country. We had a wonderful 2 weeks. But then after that, we were leaving on a local bus. And they stopped me and my friend, and because I speak the language, I could communicate clearly with them. And that's when they took me and my friend, without any explanation, to a building. And it was there that they began to beat me. It was there they began to hit me. They never said why. They separated me and my friend. They took away all our clothes. They took away my glasses. And without any explanation, they took us to the basement of this building. We never saw each other again at that time, and put me into one prison cell and my friend into another one. And we were imprisoned in Iran.
Wow. So before going through the Iran story, Why did you choose to go to Afghanistan?
I love Muslims, and many Muslims are some of my dear friends. And I always knew that I want them to know about Jesus. And so, yeah, I put those two together, and I got an invitation to go to Afghanistan to work at a hospital. It was a way to get a visa. I was open to going anywhere, but Afghanistan came into my thinking and into my understanding to get a visa. I wanted to live in a country that was mostly Muslim so that I could, share about who Jesus is. And I fell in love with Afghanistan, fell in love with the people, fell in love with that place. And I wanted to spend the rest of my life living in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm. And what are some part of the culture that really you can relate with them? And maybe also you miss them now that you are living in the US.
Oh, yeah, there's so much. I think about Afghanistan every day. I wish I could be there. I love their hospitality. It's some of the most beautiful characteristics of how we are made to be hospitable, and they show it almost better than anyone I know. I love the fact that they have time for each other. Many times in a fast society, we get so busy and don't have time to sit and talk. Afghans always had time to sit and talk with me. They always had time for me. The Afghans were always very, very curious about who I was. They really took interest in me, and that caused me to want to take interest in them. And we have become such good friends, sitting late at night in their homes, eating food and drinking tea and talking about life. And I fell in love with the culture.
Nice. And so you were working in Afghanistan. You went to Iran for 2 weeks, and then you have been imprisoned there. So tell us a little bit about your time in prison. What happened? How did you live? And how was the condition that you lived in?
Yeah. We were there again for 2 weeks of just visiting, and that's when we were taken and put in prison. When I was put finally into my cell in my prison clothes, I didn't have glasses. I never would for many, many weeks. I slept on the floor. My room was maybe 3 by 4 meters, very tiny room. I was alone the whole time. I had a blanket which became my mattress because I was on the floor. There was a toilet in there, there was a sink in there, and then the door had a little peek hole. But also the light was on 24 hours a day. And this was my new life. I was stuck in this cell. I didn't know why. I didn't know how long I would be there. And that was my new world.
So for how long did you stay in prison?
Yeah, I came in. I found out that I had 2 death sentences on my life. One for being a Christian and one for being a spy for America. I began to meet a few other people, and I found out that I could be there for many months, and I could actually be there for many years. Nothing was very set on paper how long I would be there, except that I would probably be there either the rest of my life. And so my situation, how long I would be there, was completely unknown my whole time I was there. I never knew. And yeah, I ended up being there 9 weeks.
Okay. Were you able to count the days, or you just lost hope?
No, was completely lost focus. I was not able to count the days. There was sunlight that came into my room through a window, but even then I could not really count the days, sun up, sundown. I was not in a good place. I was a nervous wreck. In fact, my nervous wreck situation caused me to have more and more doubts about my situation. which causes me to have more depression. In fact, it was the most depressing, hardest time of my life. And it was there that one day, after being a couple weeks, that I decided to try to take my life. I thought, why would I live here the rest of my life? How can I live here the rest of my life? I was sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night. I was a complete mess because I had no idea. And one day I woke up and thought, wow, maybe I should get out. And then I had an idea. There was a sink in the room, and if I took my sock, I could plug the sink. If I plugged the sink and filled it with water, they had given me a big towel. And if I could take the towel and tie it on one side of the sink and then put the towel over my head, if I tied it really tight on the second side while the sink was filled with water with my head underneath, 4 or 5 minutes later, I would be free. And I thought to myself, why live here? Why not go? And 4 times I tried. And every time I tried, I was too scared. I was too scared to tie the towel tight. I was too scared to try to end my situation, try to end all the trouble I had. And I fell to the ground after 4 tries. And that's when something in my heart broke. And I realized more shame than I've ever known, more depression than I've ever known, and more, condemnation on myself than I've ever known. Like, how could I do this? And yet, while I was there, the room started to shake. As the room started to shake, I started to lift my head, thinking it was an earthquake. And then the room became a glorious white light. As I saw this glorious white light, I had a simple vision. I've had many visions in my life. And this simple vision was simply Jesus standing next to the wall. His face very much looking like a picture of Jesus we might have seen on television. But his face was filled with kindness, filled with a big smile of love and acceptance. And as I looked at him, I felt the love go right into my heart. And wonderful Jesus say these simple words right to my heart. Dan, I still love you. Dan, I still care for you. And I want to help you. And from that day until today, I've never had those thoughts again. And that's who Jesus is. He not only rescued me from prison, but he rescued me from me. Because he is so good and so kind. And that's what I discovered there when I was there.
Wow, that's an amazing testimony. Thank you. And so, like after your release, how did your perspective of life and freedom change?
While I was there for 9 weeks. After that moment of trying to take my life, I accepted my new life. I never knew how long I would get out of there. They would take me out of my cell maybe once a week. I was beaten every day. I was tortured very regularly. And so I just sat in my cell day by day, never knowing anything. And many people ask me, well, how did you ever get out? And yes, I have 2 passports because my dad's from Switzerland. I actually have a Swiss passport with an American passport. And Switzerland had an embassy there in the country. And it was the Swiss embassy that found out that I had been put in prison, and they negotiated my release. I never knew about it. I never knew one day to the next if anyone even knew I was there. But then it was completely by surprise, out of the blue, after 9 weeks of sitting there. They took me to a room and said, get dressed. I was expecting other prison clothes. Instead, it was my clothes. As I put on my clothes, I'm like thinking, why? Why are they making me getting dressed in my clothes? I only thought maybe it would be my last day because I knew many people being executed in that prison. My clothes didn't fit. I lost 25 kilos. So then I was there and I'm putting on my clothes. As I put on my clothes, they put me on a bus. I'd been on that bus before. I had been before to a courthouse, and that's ended up where we went. The trial was what I had a few weeks before, but on that day, they took me to this room. And I found out later it was an office. In that office comes a man. He turns out to be the head judge of all the courts of Iran. And as he comes in, he looks at me and he says this. He says, because of our friendship with Switzerland, and as we've been working with our embassy here, today we choose to release Dan Baumann, and he's a free man.
Wow.
And on that day, the crazy, crazy day of complete change, when I'm thinking I'm going to die, and I get rescued from this prison cell, 100% the mercy of God. And it was not just being rescued from that prison, but because of the story I told you, it was also a discovery that God was able to rescue me from myself. Because he's that kind and that good. Swiss ambassador was in the room, and he walked me to his car. As he walked me to his car, I became free. He took me straight to the airport. I flew on the one flight there was that night, a commercial flight to Germany with a connecting flight down to Switzerland where my aunt lived. And that's when it finally became real that I was free. I was free to go for a walk. I was free to look at the sky. I was free to eat what I want. I was free to not have the light on 24 hours a day. So many little freedoms in life I'd taken for granted, and God gave them all back to me. But the greatest freedom I got back was the freedom to walk with Jesus again and to enjoy walking with him and being with him. And that's very much what I've done since that time. Walking with him and telling people that even when they face the hardest things in life, even when they have no choice, even when they have a situation they can't explain, like I had there in prison, God is still around and God still cares. And I got to see his love for me directly.
Thank you. That's amazing. And I just have another question, like, because you travel all around the world talking with many people, many young people, and I'm just wondering, what are the most common challenges that you see people facing, and what kind of advice do you give them?
The biggest problem in the world today is people's view of God. Their view of God is either tainted or not directly connected to who he actually is by either culture or by what we've heard or by what we've heard from different, church settings. And the Christian life is this discovery of actually who he really is. I travel around the world, and at universities today, the biggest question is, how can a good God allow bad things happen to good people? And it has to do with our view of God. And it has to do with the simple view of, is God love? And I've always believed and discovered in my own journey that he is love. That even if I face hard things, he is loving. And it has to do with me looking to him. And it has to do with the privilege of having free choice to love him back. How can you have love if you don't have free choice? If you don't have free choice, then you're a robot, and you're not free to choose love, because love is a choice. And that's who God is. He created us, giving us the freedom to choose him. And so around the world, for anyone who is willing to take a risk and actually try to discover a God who loves them and cares for them, the opportunity is there by simply believing and simply taking that choice to want to know more about who this God is, who does care for them, who is good. And that's what I long for people to know around the world, that God is still good. It's not based on their circumstances. We serve a God who says, come as you are. He's not telling you to come in a certain way. He's not telling you to come if you've done this or not done that. No. He says, come as you are. He accepts us where we're at. He just wants us to come to him. And from that, he wants us to discover that in our world, in our situation, he is good, that he does care. Many people think God doesn't care, and I've discovered, no, he does care. I did not feel good there in prison, and in fact, it led me to take my own life. And yet, it was my view of God that needed to change. And in that wonderful vision, I began to see again that God still accepted me in my shame. He accepted me in my craziness, in my crazy decisions. And I want young people around the world to know that the God is with them where they're at. He knows what they're going through. He knows what they've heard about God or what they haven't heard about God. And he is still good and wants to show himself to them in a very loving way if they simply let him.
And what's like how the Muslim world see God, and what is the biggest difference between the Western world and the Muslim world about God and the vision, the worldview?
Yeah, again, most Muslims are not radical Muslims at all. So it's hard to get into the worldview thing because, yeah, again, to be a radical Muslim, you need to be fluent in Arabic and know Arabic to even know the Quran. So at the end of the day, it becomes just a cultural thing. What Islam really is that. If you talk to any Muslim, of course they'll say they're Muslim, but they really are saying is they are Muslim because their culture is this certain, Islamic reality. And so, yeah, and Muslims believe that God is one. And yeah, we get the privilege to introduce them to the fact that we believe the same. It's just we also believe he's three in one. And yes, there's a difference there. But when Muslims begin to see how I relate to God and how he wants to relate to their world and their situation, yeah, there will become an openness to discover who God is. And if God is love, how can you be loved if you have no one to love? And at the core, that's why I believe in the Trinity, is because at the core of who God is, there has to be love. And if he's just one, how can he love anyone? But that's just a theological difference. I have many Muslim friends. We don't get into theology because we have difference of views. That becomes less and less important. What's important is that I love them. What's important is that we're friends. What's important is I listen to them and I care for them. And that's how I live. And my Muslim friends are growing and growing all over the world.
Okay, if we want to know more about your life, we can read your books. I have all of your books here.
Oh my gosh, you are too nice.
So, if you want to tell us a little bit about this book, as a last question, it's more a personal question because I love this book. So, if you want to tell us a little bit about this book and when did you write it and why did you write it?
Yeah, fear is one of the greatest challenges in our world today, and we're trying to do everything we can to get rid of fear. And in my own journey, I've discovered this. The more I run to Jesus, the more I know who Jesus is, I began to realize that he's actually greater than fear. So the issue is not so much getting over fear, it's discovering how great Jesus is. And if I run to Jesus 5 times a day when I'm afraid, I get to know him those 5 times. If I struggle with fear 10 times a day and I run to Jesus 10 times, then I get to know Jesus 10 times. Well, then you have to ask the simple question. Well, do I get to know Jesus more running 5 times or 10 times? Well, 10 times. And so if it is 10 times, then you have to ask another hard question. Then what is fear? Fear is an invitation. It's an invitation to know that God is with us and that Jesus loves us. And that's very much been my journey. And I've struggled so many times with fear. I told you about my suicide attempt in prison. I've struggled with fears of what people think, fears of failing, fears of having no money, many fears of never getting married, many fears I've had throughout my life. And all I can say is my fears are becoming an invitation to know who God is. And I run and I run and I run to God, to Jesus. And I begin to discover who he is and that he does care about me in those situations, that he doesn't reject me, that he's not upset with me, that there's no condemnation, and that in the love of God, I begin to discover the joy of knowing him. And the more I think about him, the more I understand who he is, I actually think about and worry about my fear less. So I'm actually coming over a lot of my fears, not by trying to get over it, but by discovering the greatness of Jesus in my life. And yeah, I would want everyone in the world to know that no matter what fears they face, it's a simple invitation to turn to Jesus and discover how good he is and discover it again and again. And yeah, may he win our hearts. And in that, we're going to struggle with fear less.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for your time, for being here with us. So we really loved this interview and the time that you spent with us. So thank you so much.
Wow, I'm so honored. I wish we could sit together and have tea and have some pizza and pasta.
Me too.
Yeah, I wish God would open up that door. But until then, may you be blessed today. May you be encouraged. May you just have a wonderful day in all that you're doing.
Thank you
It's
so much.
such a privilege to be with you. And I can't wait to get to Italy.
Yes.
And I can't wait to be with you and enjoy you and your people. And yeah, I love Italy. And God bless you.